Testing 1 2, testing 1 2.
Dutch Neck.
Beg pardon?
Did you move from Dutch Neck?
Oh, no, I lived in Newland. We lived, chair.
Yeah, okay. I'll just put this here so we can listen to you.
We lived in Ewing for 50 years on the,
50 years.
yeah, on Green Lane, which was the, just on the edge of the back entrance to the Trenton State College, or the College of New Jersey.
Yes, right.
And we lived there 50 years. Yeah, my husband and a friend dug the cellar with a scoop and a shovel, plow, or whatever.
Wow.
And then my husband
So that
put,
must have been during the war.
beg pardon?
That must have been during the war.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, we lived there 50 years.
Now, where were you born now?
Where was I born?
Yeah.
I was adopted.
Oh, but, okay, so,
I was a Blair
uh-huh.
from Blairstown.
Oh.
My mother was a Blair.
Oh, neat.
Oh, so your maiden name was...
My maiden, no, we'll start with that. My mother was 16 when I was born.
Okay. Wow.
And of course, that was a terrible thing in those
Yeah,
days.
My good. Well, now, what year is that? That's,
June the 13th, Friday, June the 13th, 1913.
oh, my God.
Mm-hmm. But my grandmother,
Mm-hmm.
Blair, had twin children who were twins,
Mhm.
and she claimed that she couldn't handle me too. So they put an advertisement in the paper for someone to keep me
Uh-huh.
board. And Mary Ann Borthwick,
Mm-hmm.
who eventually became my mother, my
Mhm.
foster mother, answered the advertisement. And I was boarded there till I was 3 years old. Then the gentleman who owned a theater in Blairstown wanted to marry my mother, but he didn't want me. So they were going to put me in an orphanage. And my boarding foster mother said no. And of course, in those days, I'm supposed to keep this up in the air, I'm sorry.
So that's okay.
You have to see my foot. And she said no. And of course, you didn't have to have money
Mm-hmm.
or be wealthy or anything in those days to adopt a child. And so when I was 3 years old, they adopted me.
And did you take their family name at that?
Borthwick.
Borthwick.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for that, Pete.
Mm-hmm.
B-O-R-T-H?
B-O-R-T-H-W-I-C-K. You're not going to put this in the paper,
No,
are you?
no, but just it's fun to know. I mean, no, we're not going to put that whole, no. But we could say,
Although I'm not ashamed of it.
No,
you
just
know.
your original.
And I don't blame my mother.
You know.
She had a right to have a life of her own. And
So then as a child, though, you were Lucilla Borthwick.
I
right?
was
That's
Elspeth Lucilla.
Elizabeth.
Elspeth.
Elspeth.
Mhm.
E-L.
E-L-S-B-E-T-H.
Because that's what Henry was saying, was that your name, just Lucilla, is almost like it's a Victorian name. What a
Well,
beautiful
the only
name.
place I've seen Lucilla is in an English novel.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. That's the only place I've ever seen it, is Lucinda, Lucille,
Mhm.
but not Lucilla. But,
There was an Elspeth Huxley, a member of that famous
Yes.
family of anthropologists.
Mhm.
All that.
Mhm. Mm-hmm.
Aldous Huxley's sister.
My mother and father, my adopted mother and father, foster father, he was a commercial fisherman. And we had very little money. Mama took in washings and cooked in a hotel. I was in Port Monmouth, in Monmouth County. I don't know whether you know where that is.
Sure, right. Not far. That's down toward Freehold, right?
It's between Kingsburg and
Kingsburg, right.
and Leonardo
Right.
in there, and As a matter of fact, the trolley tracks went right through almost through our front yard.
How's the trolley between where and where?
The trolley went from, well, I don't know, Keyport, and down Kingsburg, and on down to Atlantic Highlands, down that way. This is the lighthouse that's up on the top of the hill in Atlantic Highlands, the big one. And that's the Sandy Hook Lighthouse. This one lights up. The Sandy Hook Lighthouse lights up.
Oh, yeah, not just the lighthouse, the house itself.
Yeah.
Oh, neat.
That's Tiffany Glass.
I've seen that. I used to get up to Sandy Hook more often than.
Well, you see, now,
Rumson
I was
and Seabright.
ill. Yeah, it goes out, Sandy Hook goes out there at Seabright and Highlands, out into the ocean, between the ocean and the bay. And,
An American journalist I knew.
I wasn't driving,
Mm-hmm.
and I saw this advertised in a magazine. So my husband took me, I called the number where the advertisement was, and it was up beyond Princeton.
Mm-hmm.
So my husband drove me up there, and this is the only one they had in the Tiffany glass. Now they are all ceramic.
Yes,
Or
exactly.
plastic.
This is beautiful.
They're nowhere near as
Yeah.
nice as this is.
When did you get this? How
Oh,
long
I've
ago?
had that. I had that before we moved here. Isn't that pretty?
But it is, it's true, they're all plastic now, they're
Yeah,
sort of
yeah.
junky ceramic stuff.
This is
Beautiful.
a collectible.
Really nice.
Of course, as you can see, I collect all kinds of things. I'm a
Wow. So that's probably how you got into the library business, right? Just, I don't know, loving
uh-huh.
books and things and.
Well,
wow.
we didn't have enough money for me to go to college, and I obtained a small position down in the Middletown Township Library in Navesink. And then what I did was I borrowed money every summer and went to college for the summer.
Where?
I went to Columbia University one summer. I went to Trenton State College 2 or 3 summers. Finally, I got my degree in library science. I worked for it.
Yeah.
Nothing was handed to me.
Right.
Remember how old you were then?
Oh, heavens no. I'm 84 now, you
Right,
know. You could probably figure that out.
Were you
You look
maybe 20
great.
or so?
Beg pardon?
Were you perhaps 20 when you finished college? Or
When
was
I
it
got my degree, no, because I didn't graduate from high school till I was 17 or 18.
Right.
And I went to summer school, quite a few summers.
And you
I
weren't
was-
married yet?
I was
Were
in
you
my
married?
20s.
You weren't married yet.
Yes, I was,
Oh, you-
I got,
Uh-oh. Here we go again.
I was,
I told you she has a really
I was
interesting life.
going to Trenton State College,
Yeah.
and there was a little store up at the corner, Ewingville and Pennington Road, and a man and his wife ran the store, and the lady said to we girls, would you girls like to meet some of the local boys? We said, sure. And I married one of the local boys. He just lived down, his family just lived down the street.
So that's your connection with Ewing. You ended up
Yeah.
living
Mm-hmm.
in his area.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's true. And then you were married for how many years?
65. He died the 3rd of April. And we've been married 65 years. Our anniversary was in January. We eloped to Elkton. We sneaked away. And here, I shouldn't do that. I've got a little arthritis in the back of my neck. In fact, I'm going to Dr. Carney. I'm going to Dr. Carney to see about this arthritis. And of course, we thought it was a big secret. But one of the neighbors in down the street from Robert's mother and father saw an announcement in the paper of the marriages in Elkton. And of course, right away they thought I was pregnant, you know. Sneaked away, you know. So I said to Robert, I was living there. I wasn't in the dormitories. I was living there. I said to him, how about if I put a pillow underneath my and I'll walk around and see, let him, you know, I hate to disappoint him.
Yeah, right.
Well, my daughter, who was 54 when she died, we were married 4 years before she was born, so they were terribly disappointed, I'm sure. And then eventually, Robert's father built a little bungalow in the back of their home, and we lived there for several years.
What was your husband's family?
Tilton.
Tilton.
Yeah. Clifford Tilton, he was a well drawer.
Well,
Robert's, an artesian well drawer. Robert's father. When his father became too disabled to run the business, Robert took it over.
Robert,
My husband.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right. And then your Robert had nothing to do with it. And
No.
Which is great.
He went to Lanning School, which was the school where the teachers at Trenton State College practice taught those who were going to become teachers.
Okay.
Did practice teaching in the Lanning School.
Lanning, L.A.?
L.A. Yes, right on 31.
It's still there.
Still, the school is still there. I think it's closed now. I think they closed it this year. Yeah. And Miss Matlack was the principal, and she was a lovely woman. And eventually, I went back to work. I got a part-time job with Mercer County Library and worked down in the Mercer County Courthouse.
So was that your first job, or no? That was your real first job.
Yes,
So,
since I had been married.
okay.
Yeah.
So you got it.
And one day I came home and I said to Robert, well, of course, neither he nor his sister were supposed to take anyone in the house until I got home.
Oh, okay.
But walked in the house one day, and there were these spots all over the ceiling. He had his boyfriend, and they'd been seeing who could touch the ceiling, jump up, touch the ceiling. Well, of course, my son had to wash the ceiling. But anyway, I said to him, what is that? What are you cooking? He said, I made a cake for Miss Matlack's birthday. And that was the beginning of his.
How old was he then?
Oh, he was in Lanning School.
And that was grammar school.
That was grammar school, yeah.
This is the bakery
Mhm.
Wonderful way.
Yeah, even now he has 7, 8, 9 cakes a week.
And his name is
Weekend.
Robert Tilton.
Right.
Robert B.
And so he
Robert.
made it to the third,
Yeah.
right?
He eventually, he finished high school. He went to baking school in, oh Lord, I can't think of the name now. They had a school there, and they recommended he go to the American Institute of Baking in Chicago. And as a matter of fact, I think he got a scholarship or something of some kind. And then when Robert graduated from there in Chicago, his father and I drove out to the graduation. And, excuse me, and they said, you know, we don't generally mention the names of our graduates. The fact that they graduated from here is significant, enough. But we have a young man here today who's graduating. It was exceptional. And it turned out to be our son. Woodbridge was where the baking school was that he left, yeah. See, these things, yeah, I think I'm in the middle of the night.
Oh, hey, I'm there already. So you actually, that would be unique then, because when you then started working, because I guess Robert's probably around how old is Robert?
My son?
Yeah. Because you're my mom's age, my dad's 83.
Yeah, I'm 84.
Right. So,
and my daughter was 54 when she died, and he was 4 years younger than she.
How long ago was that?
So she died about 3 years ago.
So she'd be 57 this year.
Yeah,
He would be 54.
four. Yeah.
so you were unique in a way to go to work in those days, because I remember my mom, when I was born, my mom, very few women worked in the 40s and the mid-40s and 50s. And when did you actually then start with Mercer County, the library? Can you remember? Was it probably, how old was Robert? He was in
Well, I was 12 years in West Windsor, and
Now, which of the branch, Mercer County's libraries always have branches, I think.
well, they started out in the courthouse
In
in Trenton.
Trenton.
Yes, across from the jail, where the jail was. What is that street? That's the street that comes up, crosses over Broad Street.
Yeah, I know it, by the where it is, by the courthouse.
Yeah, by the courthouse. And
That was
I
where
worked,
you first worked.
that's where I got a part-time job. Yeah. And then Mira Visori, who was the head of the Mercer County Library at that time, decided to retire. And she the man who was working there she hoped would succeed her, but he was not a veteran. And veterans had an extra 10 points or something on the test that they took, which qualified them to
They gave him 10 points extra.
Yeah.
That's true, that's true.
I think they still do. They still
Civil
do.
services.
Yes, civil service, So he didn't get the position. But who on earth, who was it that succeeded that? See, my memory gets a little vague.
Wonderful.
Anyway.
I remember more than I remember.
I was still kept there. Miriam Scudder was there.
So you were still an assistant librarian? Or, okay.
Was she of the Scudder Mills family?
Yes. Yeah.
And Scudder Falls.
And her aunt lived in the big apartment house right there at Calhoun and State Street, the one on 29. You know, what is that?
There's a house there that's great.
It's not a house, it's an apartment house.
Yeah.
But it's gone to pot now.
Yeah. The office where I work in Trenton is just half a block up from that.
It was about 3 places down from New Jersey Manufacturers, originally where New Jersey Manufacturers was. And we've had insurance with New Jersey Manufacturers about 43 years, my husband and I, our house and our cars, whatever. We probably are one of their oldest clients.
So then, how did you get to the book? I mean, how did you get to West Windsor then?
Oh.
Was that just a...
Well, that, from there,
I was trying to place what year approximately you started work for
Mercer County Library.
Was it during World War II? Can you remember the war started? So you were 25 or so by the time you finished college,
Mm-hmm.
You got married.
and that would have been 1938.
I didn't get married till I was 32, I think, or something. I think.
Okay. Then you had Robert.
Yeah.
Yes, he's 54.
I had Patricia first.
Okay, so she was 54. So that's getting close to
Mm-hmm.
Well, she must have been born in 1940, if she was
43.
57.
57.
She was, I don't know, I
And
can't,
he must have been born in 1945, or 43.
could have been.
44.
So you had the little kids then when you were working. That's what we're trying to figure
Oh,
out.
yeah. No, I didn't go back to work for Mercer County. I didn't go to work for Mercer County until, they were in high school.
Okay, so then that puts it.
Oh,
So
so it would have
that's
been the
okay.
late 40s, early 50s.
So that's yeah.
And I explained to them that I was going to work because, not because their father couldn't support us, but it would give us all a little extra.
Sure, you did exactly what my mom did.
Mhm.
I was in high school, and she went and got her teachers. Then she had a degree at Douglas, I guess, in psychology, but she went back and then became a teacher. And when my well, there were 10 years between us, but she started when my littlest sister was in grammar school, but I was like, at that point, almost in high school. So, but that was, she wanted to supplement, she wanted to get out, she wanted to, have just a little bit more to
That's what
supplement
I told
was
them.
there.
And they each had a special job to do. Robert had to take care of the garbage.
Right.
Patricia used to have have supper started when I got home, so we could eat at a regular time. And they weren't brought up like the children are nowadays.
Oh, nobody was.
No.
I mean, none of us were. We all did chores. We had,
They had certain chores to do. And now, where did we leave off?
well, I'm trying to think, yeah. I'm
In
trying
the
to
late
think, yeah.
50s, when you first started working for Mercer County Library in Trenton,
Oh,
and then somehow you got to West
the
Windsor.
the first branch was in a building next to the Ewing High School.
Okay.
That was where the first branch
Of the library.
in
Okay,
Ewing.
okay.
Uh-huh.
Oh, that's
That would have been
interesting,
in the
yeah.
50s.
Right.
It was right next to I think a clothing store or something like that. Then they moved over to Scotch Road
Where they are
into
now.
a big cement building. We used to call it what we did call something, we used to laugh at. It looked like more like a mausoleum than it did the library. And it's right across the way now, that building, right across from the
From the
Ewing branch
from the
that's
Ewing
there
branch
now.
that's there
Yeah.
now, Scotch Road, yeah.
And then they moved from that into the shopping center and had their branch in the shopping center.
Right.
And I, of course, moved right along with them. But
Boy, talk about getting in on the ground floor.
now, yeah, then there was someone on the staff who resented me very much
Of that Ewing branch.
at the Ewing branch. And she used to, by that time, we had Bob Malone for director. And she used to run to with Tales to him and so forth. And then I had back surgery. And when I came back to work, I was not supposed to do any bending over or anything
Or
like that.
lifting.
Or lifting. And one day I came into work at 1 o'clock because I was going to work till 9 that night, and no one had put a single book away. The books were piled up, the book truck was piled up, and I went back and I said to the director, I said, look, I should not, I'm not supposed to lift or bend, and the book truck is full, no one has touched a thing. The rest of the staff were just a little leery of this woman because they didn't want to get in bad with her. And I said, furthermore, I said, I understand that while I've been ill, you have stocked the West Windsor branch with books.
Uh-huh.
And since I have the senior librarian's position, I should go down there. Well, they said, when do you want to go? I said, tomorrow will be fine.
But now they had a bookmobile before they started that branch,
Yeah,
right?
yes. Mm-hmm.
And that came from the Ewing?
And I was on the bookmobile too.
Okay.
I forgot about that. Yeah, but I was on the bookmobile before I had my surgery.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that went from, and did you find those pictures?
You said something about snapshots, but I don't think they're much good. They're kind of dull.
Did the bookmobile load itself from the Trenton Central Library or from
Oh, no.
Ewing?
Trenton was not part of the Mercer County system.
No, I already spoke about it, but the original Mercer County Library was in Trenton.
Well, yes, but
Yeah.
you see, it all moved out. It all moved out into Ewing.
And then, I see, then it went to Ewing, not as a branch. It was still
It was a
Mercer County-
headquarters.
It was still Mercer County Library. when it was
Headquarters.
in Ewing.
Yeah.
And it was from Ewing that it began to branch.
Mhm.
To West Windsor and other places.
They had a branch in East Windsor. We eventually had a branch in East Windsor, Hightstown. One time
There's a branch in Lawrenceville now.
on the QT, I went from West Windsor over to Hightstown. Mrs. Hoyt wasn't well, but she didn't want to retire. So I used to sneak over there and take the desk over and let her lie down on the couch in the back room and swore her to secrecy while my assistants ran the West Windsor branch,
Which was in Dutch Neck.
which was in Dutch Neck. It was the Sunday school building across from the Dutch Neck Presbyterian Church.
Is the building still there?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
That's where
the Board of Education.
the Board of Education building. Okay,
It's
yeah,
a
yeah.
Board of Education building, yeah.
Now, this bookmobile, though, is cool. This came from the Ewing branch. In other words, then you put all the books
Mm-hmm.
on it from the Ewing branch, and this is you, I guess, right?
That's me.
And who are you with?
That's Steve Burrows, I think his name
Oh, his
is.
name is
Turn
back,
out,
yeah.
look on the back.
Oh, yeah, right, okay.
Has a date there.
Yeah, 1971.
Mhm.
Yeah, okay.
Mhm.
All right.
I might be mixing things up a little bit, forgetting things and.
No, this is, no, you're making, he's just, you have to remember, he's an historical writer, because he did the book, so he's very much into historical sequence, kind of thing, but no, this makes sense. But I just wondered, because when I moved to West Windsor, it was like 70, and there wasn't a library then, so this bookmobile.
No,
wait,
that was still circulating that circulated in West Windsor.
Right, that's what I meant,
Before they
yes.
opened the
Because
branch.
it said 1971, so
But
then.
I was in the hospital when they stopped the
Right.
branch.
Right.
And then they had Isabel Martin, who was not a librarian. She was just a person who worked behind the desk. They sent her down there
The Dutch Neck.
to open it.
Okay.
Yeah. And he called her and told her that she should come back to Ewing the next morning, that I was coming down to West Windsor. And she said, that's not fair. She said she shouldn't be down there by herself. I should be allowed to stay with her a couple weeks till she gets acclimated, you know. So he said, okay. But
So you were gonna be there all by yourself in that building?
if she hadn't interceded, I would have.
Wow, with no help?
No help. I didn't have any help when she left. I didn't have any help. But we had only circulated just a few books. You know, we didn't circulate any great number of books.
And the population still wasn't, because I remember with my daughter, when she was little, we came to that library.
Was
And,
I there?
You must have been, because she was born in 73, and it was before the new
I
one.
was there
so
12 years and
you
retired in
were there.
'78. So
Okay.
Yeah.
So it must
Well,
have
I'll
been,
tell you a tale about some little girls. I hope your daughter was one of them.
No, she would be too young then.
She never told you. Anyway, the first thing I did was go over the collection and check to see what was missing. And then I made out a list of books that I thought, now maybe, say for example, Shakespeare. They didn't have, you know, this and that. And the director said to me, "Will you tell me why you want to buy a list of books like that for a bunch of potato farmers for?" Yeah, that's what he said. They were his exact words. And I looked at him, I said, "It isn't always going to be a potato farming area. It'll increase. People will
Yeah, but
come."
the indication also is that potato farmers are only going to
Yeah.
read one kind of literature.
Which is wrong. I mean, why
Yeah.
can't a potato farmer read?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was insulting the potato farmers, really.
Right.
Very much so, in two ways.
Yeah, sure. I said, well, but he agreed to buy the list I made out, and I kept on doing it, you know, a few books at a time. But I was there alone. I was allowed to close at lunchtime, and I only closed at lunchtime if I didn't have something else to do. I'd eat my lunch at the desk, and if somebody came in, I waited on them, you know. And I had a rule, once I accumulated a couple of assistants, if someone asked for a book or where something was, you don't say right down there or right down there. You got out from behind the desk and you took them to where it was. Now, I had a friend down here from Ewing this morning. She came, brought a hoagie, and we had lunch. And she said, "That's what they do at Ewing now." They say, "Well, check with the computer," or "It's right over there." I said, "That's not right. That's not good service."
I must have been lucky because I was in the Union Library just a few months ago. I was checking on an American painting that ultimately went into the book. William Penn signed a treaty with the Indians. One of the things that you took me right back to the art books and put my hand on the book I needed. Now, while I was looking at that, he disappeared and came back with 3 more.
Oh, it was a man.
Yeah.
Well, that was probably the, what do you call it? Reference
library.
That was the reference library, and that's the reason he did that.
I was very, very pleased.
Yes.
With the service I got. My goodness.
Well, the reference librarian would do that, but the people behind the desk, Florence was talking about. But anyway, of course, the children decided to test me out. First, you know, there used to be a store diagonally across.
Yes, on the corner, right, I remember
Yeah.
that.
Well, some teenage girls came in one day, and they went up on the balcony. They had a balcony. I suppose you know that. It's a balcony up there. No, I loved that library. The day I walked in there, I loved it.
I just have a vague remembrance.
Next time in the Board of Education building, I should ask. There should still be a balcony.
There's a balcony there. When you go in the front door,
It overlooks the churchyard?
it looks, yes, the cemetery.
You can't see it now,
Mhm.
though. But you can't really see it now, where they've done all the renovation, and I vaguely remember the library, the old floors, the creaky floors, and it was, I can't even remember that.
I loved it. And I tried, before I left, I tried to get it put on the historic register. But I didn't think that I should do it because I was not a resident of West Windsor. And I asked someone else to do it. Someone who lived in back of the library.
Well, you have to drive every day from Ewing to Dutch Neck.
I drove from Ewing to every day. And I was always a little early. I insisted that once I had people to help me, that they be on time. Now, I said to these girls, they were giggling, and I figured they were going over to the store. I said to them, "Don't bring any food back." no food in the library. But while I was back in the reference room helping someone, they sneaked in. Pretty soon I heard this, sounded like potato chip bag or something, you know. And I went up and sure enough they had food up there. I said, okay girls, those of you who walked to school, walk home. Those of you who use the bus to come to school, go where you catch the bus and go home. You're not welcome here. You have deliberately disobeyed me. I said, what would you do if you deliberately disobeyed your mother? Oh, said one of them said she'd scream a lot, but I'd do it anyway. I said, well, I'm not screaming, and you're not going to do it. So they left. They left. I was talking to Jean Lucille this morning. You know Jean?
But Lucille, I know
Bert
the name.
Lucille?
I think Bert, yes, okay.
Well, Jean was one of my assistants
Okay, oh, all right.
at one time. And we had some little girls about this high come in, and they went up on the balcony. I never objected to them giggling and having a little fun up there if they weren't annoying any, if nobody used to be annoyed. And then after a while they left. And someone came in and I had to get some information from an encyclopedia. We kept all encyclopedias up there. And those children had written letter words all over the woodwork.
In those days.
The white woodwork. And I came down, I told Jean. Jean said, well, I guess we'll have to wash it off. I said, no, we won't. They'll wash it off. So next morning I brought a pail, some sponges, some detergent. And it was several days before they came in again. They came in again. And I let them get a nice head start, giggling, you know, and I went up and I said, put some water in the pail. I said, I have a job for you girls. I said, I want every word washed off of that woodwork. And the little girl said, I wasn't with them when they did it. I said, but you're judged by the company you keep. So you can help them wash it off. And I never heard a word from a parent. Not a word. I don't think they told their parents. I'm sure they didn't.
And they washed it all up.
They washed it all off. Yeah.
Now, these were the same ones that had the little potato chip bags, or this is a different?
No, these
this is a
were little
different
girls
thing?
about this tall.
Oh, they were?
The ones who had the
So
potato
must have
chip
been 8,
bags
9, or 10.
were high
The
school.
other kids
Were high school girls.
Yeah, so these were young.
Oh yeah, they were young
Well,
girls.
that's my daughter, because she wasn't in school yet.
They must have been 9 years old or 10 years old or something like that. I don't know. But yes, I wasn't with them when they did that.
That was.
I said, well, you're judged by the company you keep, so you're going to have to.
Wow.
And one time,
One of them was Carol Carson, is that her name?
Oh, stop. It's a joke. She's the mayor now. No,
Oh.
we're teasing. No, it wasn't. She wasn't that young. I mean, she
No.
wasn't. No.
but
No,
I bet there's still some of them still in West Windsor. Sure, yeah.
That would be funny because I bet there would be one that would now be that would probably be about 19. You said you left in 78, so it would probably be around 1975 or
70. I was going to say maybe 75 or something like
So
that.
that would be,
That's 22 years ago.
yeah, so they're probably in the young mothers themselves now.
Yeah,
in
but yeah.
their
Uh-huh.
30s, right?
Yeah.
That's funny.
And then
I don't
when-
know how old Carol Carson is, obviously.
Oh, yeah, right. No, she's older. Wasn't her.
And we used to have trouble with the lighting system, and it would smoke.
Really?
Yeah, it would smell. And I smelled it one day, and there was the only people in the library was a boy and his mother. And I went around and finally I found that the cord on one of the Venetian blinds way in the back was burned, and when I touched it, it was warm.
From what, the radiator or the heater?
No,
Oh,
no.
somebody burned it?
He did.
Oh my gosh.
And I said something to him about it, and his mother said, oh, he wouldn't do anything like that. I said, well, you're the only people who have been here, and it's still warm. And I said, not only that, look at the burn spot in the front of his jacket. How did that get there? And he said, oh, I did that in science class yesterday. I said to him, well, it looks brand new to me. So they went out in a huff. Another time, you want me to stop?
No, I love it. Go ahead.
No. We had a sign that said that in the, one of the high school, the teachers who was a high school, Larry Feber,
Oh, Larry's still around.
he's a principal in Ewing.
And Ewing, yes.
I stopped and see him. He wanted me to come in and read to his children, but with the problem I have in my leg, I haven't been able to. But I did stop in and see. And I called the superintendent of schools in Ewing and congratulated him on hiring Larry Feber. Larry Feber was the only one who used to give me a list of books that was going to cover a subject that he was going to teach, and I used to bring them down from Ewing and put them on reserve, and we had a sign that said you could only take one book on a particular subject if it was an assigned subject, assigned what?
Just an assigned, like
An assigned
project.
school project. And one day a boy came up with 2. I said, I'm sorry, but you're only allowed 1 today. I said, when you get what information you need out of that, just bring it back and you can take another one. A little while later, his mother came up with 2 on the subject. And I just smiled at her and I said to her, are you also writing a paper on that subject? She became so furious, she threw the books down on the counter, and she even threw the books she was going to take home on the counter and walked out and left them. Now, you see, that wasn't the way to teach her son, to be honest. But we had all kinds of little things happen.
But you probably didn't have that many people, because still in 1975, most of those developments weren't there in West Windsor. There were only a few.
Well,
so.
it was beginning to build up when I left. And the houses were very expensive. Yeah. Now, Pauline Wagoneer, did you know her? Pauline Wagoneer?
What was she? Where was she?
Well, she lived, her husband, she and her husband had lived all over the world. He was some kind of an engineer. And he went here, there, and all over. And finally, they moved to West Windsor, and she just decided she wasn't going to move anymore. Well, she stayed in West Windsor. She lived in West Windsor. She lived off of that, the street that goes down in front of the church.
Yeah, okay.
What's the name of that street?
Just in front of South Mill.
South Mill, yeah. And you turned off South Mill to the right down there a ways.
Yes.
She lived back in there. And she and I became very good friends. And I forgot to tell you. I almost forgot something. I was the one who organized the teenagers.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's a retirement.
Yes.
The senior citizen group, sure.
When I first saw that name, I thought it was a misprint.
No, it wasn't. It was teenagers. Now, I made a little note here. I decided that it would be nice to have a senior citizen group. And I offered a prize to whomever suggested the best name. And Nora Werner, I've been thinking about this. I thought of Werner, and then I forgot. I couldn't think of Nora, and then after a while I thought of Nora. Nora Werner suggested the teenagers. She has since passed away. And
What was her last name?
Werner, Werner. Yeah. And I gave a prize of a book called Where to Go. I think the name of the book was Where to Go in New Jersey. Does that sound familiar to you?
Yeah, well, they've had a lot. Yeah, they've got a lot of different books on where to go, where to see, what to see.
In New Jersey, yeah.
Right.
Well, that was the prize. She got the prize. And the first meeting we had, the Jim Weaver, who was the minister in the Dutch Neck Church, and I couldn't think, I was talking to Gene Lucilla this morning, and I said that there was another man on the committee, and he had something to do with chocolate. And suddenly it came to me, Ross Wilbur. Remember Wilbur Chocolate Factory? I think it's up in Lancaster or somewhere.
Pennsylvania.
Yeah. Oh. Wilbur's Chocolate. He lived in...
Know you at all, and I told him how I met you, and having all these wonderful conversations on the telephone, and then finally I went to the senior center because I had to meet this woman, and there she was.
There
I
she
said,
was,
yes,
yeah.
right.
I haven't considered, what's the business administrator?
Oh, Bob Brushay?
Yeah.
Right.
I said to him one day when I was in the senior center, and he had to come, I said, well, here's the outsider again. This is since I retired. He says, you're not an outsider, you're a tradition.
Right.
Yes,
Now, do you go over there much anymore? Because I stopped in to see Fran, and I said, and she said you hadn't been over there lately.
Well, my leg wasn't so good. It's getting better.
Do you need you're driving though. You're still driving?
I put it all up under the
Dashboard?
dashboard. I stick it up under the dashboard.
Oh, okay. But if you ever needed a ride, I would be willing to pop over and pick you up. I mean, if you ever wanted to go.
No, I'm making that all right. I don't like to be.
Don't think people driving around.
No. But
Maybe you can remind me the connection with Ross Wilbur. He was in the congregation of the Dutch Neck Church, is that?
no, I think he was in the Lutheran Church.
Oh.
Ross Wilbur.
And what was your connection with him?
That was the teenagers.
It was the teenagers. He was on the committee to organize the
Right.
teenagers.
He didn't name it, but he was.
No, the person
Yeah.
who named it Nora.
But Nora Werner was the one who suggested teenagers.
Right.
Yeah, she lived in a little house opposite the parking yard where the train tracks are,
Right,
and
okay.
facing the parking yard where the train tracks are. She lived in a house there with her daughter, and maybe her daughter still lives there, I
The
don't know.
Princeton Junction.
Yeah.
Well, I'll bet Bert Midland knows.
Oh, he knows.
Ross Wilbur because of the Lutheran connection.
I know Bert Midland very well, yes.
And he's ill.
And of course, what used to happen, as you say, West Windsor was not built up the way it is now. It was a lot of farmland, and it used to get very foggy. The fog used to roll in. Do you remember that?
Vaguely in the mornings when I used to go to the
Oh,
airport.
this was
it
at night
very
when I would work till
foggy.
9 o'clock. And the police used to come in and say to me, you better close up and leave for home, because it's going to be very difficult to find your way home. So one night, when the police came in and told me, I closed the library. Now, if it was that bad, people weren't going to come to the library.
Right, exactly.
No. But the next morning, the president of the Board of Trustees called me. He said, Mrs. Tilton, I called yesterday and no one answered. Why wasn't the library open? Or I called last night,
Right,
rather.
last night.
Yeah. I said the library wasn't open because I was working and the police came in and told me I better leave if I wanted to find my way home without getting lost. And then one night I had a problem with my car, and I'll tell you whose husband, what is her name? She works in a municipal building.
Kay Reed?
Kay Reed.
Yeah, she's a doll.
She was in 4-H
Stanley, yes.
when I was a 4-H leader in Ewing,
Right.
and
Clifford.
I knew them, so I went over to their house.
Because they lived right down the road at that
Yeah,
time.
it's
Yeah.
just down the road from the
Right.
library.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, Mary Sketchum must live very close.
Yeah, they did. Yeah. And he came over, he got my car started, and he insisted on following me all the way home to make sure that I got home safely, that the car didn't decide to conk out again or something.
Yeah.
People were very good. I never had any trouble. Only the woman who I backed into up at this post office one day.
Post office here?
No,
Oh,
Princeton
Oh,
Junction.
Princeton Junction.
I looked. You know how that
Is that when it was on Hightstown Road?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, that horrible place anyway.
came up in here, and here was the post office, and went out, yeah. Well, I looked before I started to back up, and there wasn't anyone there. But she came in, I guess, hell-bent for election, and I whacked her one. Well, I told her that I had New Jersey manufacturers and I would report it. And I was sorry. I said, why didn't you blow your horn? She said, I didn't know where to find it.
I can believe that.
So, what was that?
Points are different these days instead of.
Yeah.
A pair of mine is.
Well, it's funny you say that because I just went to visit my mom, and my aunt had a brand new leased car, and she's about 71 now. And it was so funny, we went to pick up my mom, and because she just lives down the street, but I had been in her house, and we got into the driveway, and Gloria goes, and nothing happens. And like she's going like this all over, like she's banging on it, and then finally she found the spot that you just have to touch, but you have to know.
And she didn't know where it was. That's why she didn't sew. I told her I'd report it, New Jersey manufacturers, I was insured. And I don't know just how much was after that. One of the police officers came in the library. He said, Mrs. Tilton, I really don't have any jurisdiction on this, but there's a woman outside, he said, and she insists that I come in and bring you out, that you hit her in front of the post office. Or you hit her car, which it wasn't. And I said to him, well, I told her, and I did report it. It will be taken care of. Well, he said, would you mind coming out? I said, no, I'll go out with you. So when I went out, she said, well, I don't believe you even reported it, she said. She said, I know what's going to happen. Your insurance is going to go way up. And New Jersey manufacturers doesn't do that. And I said, well, you're mistaken. It was reported, and they will eventually get in touch with you. I said, and it's too bad that you forced the police officer into this because he was reluctant.
So when you retired in 78, then was that a mandatory sort of retirement age? I mean,
No,
you had
my
to-
daughter was very ill, and she was in the Robert Wood Johnson Hospital in New Brunswick. And I just didn't feel that I was giving the library enough of my attention. Thinking of her and worrying about her, I just felt I wasn't doing justice to the job.
So she was ill when she was younger then, before she was.
So I just resigned. I was 65.
Oh, you were 65.
I was 65, but I should have served one more year. And, and then I started to go back and forth. I went to New Brunswick every morning and stayed with her. And I would hold her hand and say, Patricia, if you know I'm here, will you squeeze my hand? And I got no response. She had rheumatoid arthritis to begin with, and then she had a heart attack. She had pneumonia. She had the shingles. Her whole immune system just bottomed out. And then, she was 54
No, when she died.
when she died.
But she was sick before, you
At the time we're
said.
talking about, she was only in her 30s.
Yeah. And then one morning, Robert had Bob's Cake Box on Baby Street.
Right.
And before when he went to work, he used to call the intensive care and ask her nurse how she was making out. And this one morning she said, I have something to tell you, and please don't let the hospital know I've told you. The doctor so-and-so is thinking of putting your sister on life support. So we made an excuse. Her husband, she had 2 adopted children, she and her husband. And we made an excuse to the hospital that she did not have a living will or anything, and we would like to talk to them about what might happen in the future. And they gave us a meeting. And the head nurse said she asked each one of us to say something. And I said, I want my daughter to live, not exist. And the children cried, and the head nurse said to the doctor, and what medication is Patricia on? Now, you know she looked at the chart before she came to the meeting. She knew. And he said, well, this and this and this. And she said, and is that all? Well, he said, she is on morphine. He wasn't going to mention the morphine. And it wasn't too much longer after that, she just passed away. They called her husband and said she was sinking very rapidly, and he called me and I said, you go ahead, Sam, because if I just start driving to New Brunswick, I may have an accident, and I could very well injure somebody else. And you go. And she was gone before we got there. But, so consequently, $256 a month out of my pension for medical care because I retired a year too soon. No, and then when my husband became ill, and we started getting all these bills, he was in Robert Wood Johnson Hospital here in Hamilton, and the bills started coming in. Blue Cross and Blue Shield started sending notices out that he was not eligible. He was not enrolled, and so forth.
And you've been paying for the medical.
Well, I wasn't going to let him get away with it.
She wouldn't.
I called, and I finally, I got a woman
Right.
who seemed to know what I was talking about. She said she'd look into it and she would call me back. And she didn't call me back. I took her name down, the number, and I waited a couple or 3 weeks, and then I called again, and I asked for her, and she wasn't there, but a man talked to me. And he wasn't going to call. He was going to call me back, and he didn't either. So I just kept after him, and finally, they admitted that they had made a mistake, that he was enrolled, that we were paying,
Not terrible.
that it was coming out of my pension.
Becoming more typical,
Yes.
unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
It's always good in a situation like that, not only to take the name of the person you're talking to on the phone,
Well, I did.
but the name of their supervisor also.
Well, see, that's what I
They
neglected
know
to
you
do.
have both names.
Yeah, see,
And if you don't hear from them within a reasonable time, their supervisor will be contacted. They often get things done quickly.
well, that's what I neglected to do. I should have asked for the supervisor, but I didn't, her name. And that's where I missed the boat. But eventually, and we're still getting bills, and they are paying them. And he died the 3rd of April. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think you did a wonderful job, all on your own, in that situation.
Well, you know, I wasn't too smart about what to do, except to call Blue Cross and Blue Shield.
But that's your personality. You're just a real.
I never, you know, I almost, one time, we had at the West Windsor Library, we had a delivery every Thursday. They brought new books down, maybe requests that had come in since I had picked something up. And one day, the driver brought the bags in, and I started to take the books out, and some of them were wet. And there was a couple of rather expensive ones, and they were quite wet. And I said to him, how did the books get, of course it was raining out, how did the books get wet? Well, he said, I had a flat tire, and he said I had to set them out along the road, the book bags. I said, why didn't you push them up toward the driver's seat in the van, or in the
Truck or whatever,
yeah. And they wouldn't have gotten wet. That's all I said to him. But I kept the 2 or 3 wettest ones in a bag. I got a call before I went home that night to report to the office the next morning. And I took the books with me. Well, I got a tongue lashing. How could I harass someone? I think his name was Carr. How could I do that? He was going to have me suspended for harassing a fellow employee. I said, oh, now, come on. Would you like to see something? I took the books out, put them on his desk. He said to his secretary, we'll have to take this out of his salary, charge the cost of these books out of his salary. I said, you can't do that. I said it was sort of a stupid thing to do, but on the other hand, he was honest about it, you know. And he said to his secretary, go on, it's all over. I said, oh, you decided not to suspend me after all?
Now, who were these people? These your bosses, so to speak. Were they still down at Ewing, or
they were? Yeah,
so
they
that
were.
was the
Oh,
hierarchy
yeah,
down
they
there
were.
at Ewing.
The headquarters was in Ewing.
But you were pretty much, which was good, on your own in West Windsor.
Oh yes.
Nice.
Yeah, I did pretty much what I wanted to do.
So you did all the book ordering. You did managed all the people. Well, probably weren't a lot, but putting all the books back. And did they have any programs then in the library? Like now, you know, they have sing along with so and so, and they
well,
have
we had
storytelling.
Where it's shown you. We have with this closet. You getting ready? You getting?
No, he just wants to see the picture. Oh, we're not going, Lucilla. We're going to stay here as long as you can talk. And I've got to photograph those eagles because they are incredible.
No, it's not there. We had a plate. We had a class where they painted plates.
Oh, okay.
And I have the one of West Windsor.
There's all these eagles in here.
I've got it somewhere.
Oh, don't worry, though. I'm sure we can.
Wait on. I can get it. Maybe it's here in one of these
This is
boxes.
your eagle cabinet here.
Yeah.
This is great.
Oh, I've got a lot of things out. Come on, look out the dining room too. Wait, I better put the sheet. Shoe on.
I have to take a photograph of this, Lucilla, because the paper is called the News Eagle.
The News Eagle, and that eagle
And
is.
Bill, the guy who, the publisher of the paper,
Yeah.
just loves eagles. I mean,
You wanna
eagles.
open the door?
Well, I will, well, I'll get my camera after we talk, but look at this, I'm just realizing,
The collection.
yeah, you've got them here, now, who started the eagles?
I made this one. I made those two. They were greenware.
Oh, you made them?
They were greenware and I painted.
Okay. But why the interest in eagles?
I don't know, I just liked them.
And how far back does that go? Way back, like from you?
Yes, I had those a long time. Yeah.
And these are beautiful now. These are really.
Now, what my son is going to do, if he ever finds time from the bakery, we're going to move this up so it's a little higher and put a shelf under here and put the lighthouses.
Oh, that'd be nice,
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, this is a little,
Oh, that,
that's
my son worked for a bakery down, I don't know where it was. And one of the baker's wives did things like this, and she made that. Yeah. And this is the Delta Queen,
right.
Molly Dye.
Oh, you went on a trip?
Molly Dye and Lawrence and Robert and I went down to Mississippi on the Delta Queen.
Oh, wow. That's
Oh, I've been to Switzerland, Austria, Ireland. I did a lot of traveling. And it's a wonderful thing.
Got eagles in the other room.
I'm gonna just carry my tape
Behind the
recorder.
door here is something that
Oh, look at this one. I'm just starting to really look now. Oh,
No,
look this.
that's not what I was thinking of.
Okay.
No, that's something here somewhere that.
There's an eagle in this room.
There's a couple eagles. Look, you've got one up there.
I was trying to think that the women gave it to me, that's Alaska, that blue one.
That one? Did you go on a trip to Alaska?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Did you? Oh, that's where my mom wants to go.
Uh-huh,
Is that your daughter by any chance?
that's my daughter,
Okay.
yeah.
Very
Yeah.
nice.
I'm trying to remember where on earth that thing is that, the ladies in the West Windsor Library gave it to me because I told the children stories. Oh, here, this is, look, here in the corner. What is
Oh,
that?
this here or
Yeah.
here? This
What
one?
what is that?
This one is,
No, no.
Oh, okay.
The one in back of it?
Oh, yes, that's it. That's the old library.
Yeah, take it out. No, just take this front one out and
Okay.
put it here on the table.
I'm gonna drop
You don't
anything.
have
Okay.
to worry. This is Ireland, this is Dublin.
Oh, is that Trinity College by any chance?
Trinity College.
Yeah.
I don't think it comes out though, because you have this thing on here. I don't want to take it out.
Oh, I'll get it out.
No.
I'm
No
used
need to, we can.
No, we can see it. I don't
We
want to
can-
drop anything. This is fine. See, we can see it from
I'm used
here.
to it. You move.
And, because I don't want to drop any of the other, I don't want to, see, it's kind of stuck. Oh, see, you're,
See that?
I'm just afraid I'm going to drop something. Now, that was made by what? The,
That was made in our plate painting class.
the first, okay, in,
1882, 1975.
And did they-
82 was the date of construction of that building.
Mhm.
so you did this on a Lennox plain plate?
No, I don't know what it said, whatever it says, we did it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Ooh. Oh, and it says West Windsor Library on it.
Mhm. Kind of wonder, remember, when I read that? That's all right, just lay it on the
Okay.
table, I'll put it back, because you'll get yourself all upset.
I don't want to break anything.
Don't want
Oh, but
to ruin her nervous system,
I
don't I?
know, I love it. Now, I'm seeing these pictures of you, Lucilla. I'm seeing a picture I have to have here because if we do this article, I mean, make a copy and bring it back. When was this taken?
Oh heavens, that was taken up. You know, I've got this thing that hangs down here. I think that's terrible.
Oh, okay, put it back. How about another one of you, how about one of you and your, when was that taken?
Oh, that's, I don't know. What on the back, does it say? No, it doesn't, no.
But do you have well, we're gonna take your picture tomorrow. This is a nice one too. Well, we'll see as we get the article. I'll give you a call and now how are you coming to the,
We're driving down.
You're gonna drive down, okay, and are they gonna introduce you inside?
I don't know what you're gonna do.
Well, I'm not part of that group. I'm gonna have a photographer there ready to take your picture. That's my.
Just tomorrow or on Saturday?
It's Saturday.
Saturday.
12 o'clock.
I'm going to have my hair set, so it'll look a little better than it does now.
Oh, but you look nice now. I've got my camera there anyway. I'm gonna go get my camera. Well, I'm gonna go out and tell Max some more, and I'm gonna go get my camera and take a couple pictures of an eagle.
That would be great.
Here. What's this?
Oh, no, that isn't what I was looking for.
Oh, that's from Ewing. Oh, that's
Yeah,
nice.
that's
Is that it?
1990.
That's the Senior Citizen Advisory Committee.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
I love these eagles, gosh.
Yes.
I was never satisfied to just.
There's an old rifle too.
I wanted to load it.
Mm-hmm.
When? For what?
It was my husband's.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
did he use it?
He used to go trap shooting.
It's a single barrel shotgun, isn't it? Yeah.
And I got this out. Asked the man next door, and the neighbor next door was a colonel in World War II.
Okay.
And I said to him, would you load this gun to me? He said, indeed I would not. I said, in case somebody tries to break in, I said, I'd wait till they got in the house, shot at them, not shoot at them while they were outside. He suggested you might shoot toward my house and hit one of us, so he wouldn't load it.
I see.
Nobody's gonna break in.
You don't know what they're going to do nowadays.
Yeah, that's true, I guess. This is really neat, but you do collect an awful lot of things.
Oh, here, I guess this is the one I'm looking for. And I couldn't think of where it was. There, the kitchen hasn't been remodeled yet, but it's going to be someday.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, isn't that pretty? Oh,
And I took some of the dust off it.
look.
The Story Hour Mothers.
That's
So
West Windsor.
So they had a story hour then
And
at
that's
that
from
time.
West Windsor.
Yeah. That's a little work of art.
So did they like once a week or every, a couple, but it was for little kids?
Yeah, it was for the small children. Yeah,
That's
yeah.
nice.
And that's what Myra Faber wanted me to do. He wanted me to come up to
Oh, to you?
Parkway.
Okay, and do it up
And-
there with the
and-
smaller kids?
Yeah.
Oh, neat.
But,
I think I can do this, Lucilla. There we go. That is beautiful.
I don't know where, I couldn't seem to remember where it was hanging. You know.
Pretty.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna run out and get my
I've got two
camera,
cats.
right?
I saw one. I saw a black cat. A little while ago.
That's Blackie, that's the mother.
Right.
Okay.
And the daughter is about twice as big as the mother, and her
Oh.
name is Boots.
I see.
Cat named Boots?
Mm-hmm. She has white feet, you know.
Is she a little shy? Is that why she's not
Yeah, she
showing up
hides.
now?
She's, she may be a little bit.
I'm just gonna run out and get my camera to
All
take
right.
an eagle, okay?
Oh, yes. She's
See
pretty.
her?
Yeah,
And there's the other one at the foot of the bed.
Yeah, that's the mother.
That's the mother,
And
that's the daughter.
daughter. Hi,
Oh,
Bootsy.
well.
How's my Bootsy? Huh? She just go to hell.
How wonderful. How wonderful. We are very grateful that you're sharing all of these memories with
I
us.
think your ears would be tired.
No, no, no. As I said, I use libraries all the time, so I have I have a lot of
made up
interest.
my mind when I was in high school, but I was going to be a librarian. And as I said, we didn't have any money. Here, open the doors.
Open it? Okay.
Yeah, open it up, sure.
Just to show,
Wait, you want to move some things?
no, this is perfect. This is great. Just because because like I said, I forgot to bring you a couple of the newspapers to show you.
Oh,
You know, of the,
Oh, there's a copy of the paper in your car.
I know, that's why I brought something.
Right.
now when, Sam Arnold went out of business, I had the subscription to the Chronicle. Well, I didn't get any
You know what I'm gonna do?
rebate.
I'm gonna give you a complimentary subscription to this paper.
No, I don't.
I want you to because I want you to see it.
I'm perfectly.
No, I wanna get the
paid for
paper, no,
I'm
because
not-
you're
I'm
a
not
guest,
poor.
you're a star now, that's
I'm
not
not,
the point. You have to do something for people that have been in a community for so long, and let me get the paper for you.
Now, this Statue of Liberty here is made out of the original, you know, when they refurbished the Statue of Liberty? It's made out of the original
Oh, the original metal
metal.
that was in it.
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah. Plated with copper from the actual Statue of Liberty.
I see.
Yeah. I guess I'm just patriotically inclined. I don't know. I'm not buying any more now because I don't have room for them.
Yeah.
And, but if I had room, now this, teapot, it came from Ireland. It's big.
Oh.
I brought it home from Ireland.
All right. Was your family Irish originally? No? The Blairs?
No, they were Scotch, I think.
Oh.
I think
I know there's a Blair Castle in Scotland,
so.
but some of the families were divided between Ireland and Scotland anyway.
I don't know.
Did you ever get to Scotland?
No.
Did any of you travel?
I tried to talk them into, when I went to Ireland, to letting me go to Scotland, and then go back to Ireland and go back.
I see.
Okay. I don't have the latest one, but these are just, so you can see we have the eagle on the front there with two townships of Plainsboro and Plainsboro here and West Windsor here. But these are the first three. Don't be confused because the dates you're going to see
I
are the
don't care
first
anything
two
about that. But you know,
are going to be the
I
same.
suddenly realized that I wasn't getting the Chronicle anymore,
Right.
and I wondered why.
Here's the West Windsor one, the second one I did.
And then,
When did it stop? I can't remember.
December.
December was the last,
Yeah.
the end of December.
A lot of people just paid up their subscriptions
Yeah.
in December.
Oh, that's what Lucilla was saying.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
had,
paid-
paid, I paid for a year.
yeah, I
Yeah,
had
just
had,
renewed her subscription.
I had a subscription. I always kept my
Well-
subscription up ahead of time.
We had a lot of phone calls.
Why didn't he just, hello? Hello? Beg pardon? You have the, oh, that's all right. I have the wrong number. That happens all the time. Why didn't he reimburse us?
Well, that's a good question because he must owe a lot of people, and it was hard for our paper because, we didn't have anything. We're not the Chronicle, so we a lot of people said, well, are you going to honor the Chronicle subscription? And we had
Well,
thought about it.
you could go bankrupt doing that.
Well, we thought about it as a courtesy thing for maybe 6 months or something, and Sam wanted to sell us the list. At a ridiculous
Sell it.
sell
Why didn't we just give it to you?
Well, that's the thing. So we said, and then Bill's lawyer said, well, it wouldn't be a wise idea because if people come after him for other monetary reasons, we could then be implicating ourselves legally. So we couldn't do it.
See, I wouldn't know that.
So we're new paper and that's it. But I want to give you a complimentary subscription.
No, what is the subscription?
It's seniors get it $18 for 1 year.
$18, all
We're
right.
just-
I'll do that.
Okay, all right, I'm not gonna argue with you. And let me just make sure I get the.
Have you got $2 change?
Yeah, I probably do, back
Oh,
in
wait a
it, or
minute.
I probably have one, let
Yeah.
me just,
Did you have it in your hand when you went out to the car?
what, my purse?
No, you can't.
Oh, no, probably.
Oh, wait, I'll show you something else. It's on my neck.
Let me see.
Is that battery powered?
Oh, that is, now how long have you had that?
Oh, I think it needs a little oil.
That's old.
Didn't used to stop like that.
Is it $1 now?
Oh, I've had that for years and years. We used to go to a, oh, here, just keep the.
No, I have $1, I have it.
Donation.
Here you go.
No, here we go. Now I want to get the actual, let me write down the actual,
Address?
address.
Thank you.
521, is that right?
Yeah, 521.
521 McClellan Avenue, MC
Saying his name?
CLELLAN, McClellan. And Dr. Bills, to whom I go for my osteoporosis. I have osteoporosis. I take Fosamax. Have you heard of that?
No, but yeah, actually I have, because I'm supposed to have osteoporosis. I mean, I think everybody has osteoporosis. But always, I mean, somebody told me that after 30, everybody sort of has osteoporosis.
No.
No?
You can prevent it by taking the proper medication.
I think it's new, isn't it? 'Cause I think my
Estrogen or
friend-
something.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
What's your zip code?
08610.
08610.
Yeah.
C-L-E-L-L-A-N.
Yes, but Dr. Bills tells me that his this street was named after his great-great-great-grandfather.
This street you're on,
Mm-hmm.
here, McClellan.
McClellan.
Well, he must
So that's the one.
he must have been related to the famous McClellan, who was Civil War general.
Right.
governor of
Probably.
New Jersey.
Oh, here's Governor? Oh, so that's it. Yeah, that's neat.
I talk so much I'm getting.
Can you get your glass of water?
Oh, would you like a glass of grape juice or cranberry juice?
Fine, I'm fine.
I come with you.
That's all right.
Yeah, that's
I
fine.
got cranberry juice in the refrigerator.
Oh, that's sweet.
Well,
Do you want one?
No,
No.
I thought about asking you a while back, and then I got off on another
No, I
subject.
love listening to you. I mean, I must have talked to you for how long on the phone? I mean, as I said, I would call her about her son's cake thing, and I don't know, we talked about llamas. We talked about, you sent me that little article on the llamas. Remember when I said I was interested in llamas? You called me and told me about it. That it was
I did?
Yeah, that was way back. You're like, you're like my mom now. She goes, did I say that? Oh, it's
Well,
great.
by the time you get to be 84, you know, you don't always remember what happened 15, 20 years ago.
Right. But you must be amazed though when you see all the changes that from when you were first a young girl.
Yeah.
It's just incredible. I mean, the traffic and it's
Now, I go to a dentist up in Ewing. I was there day before yesterday, had my teeth cleaned. And he was, I don't know what you might call it. Anyway, the children of the people who were going to church were was it would you call that a nursery school?
yeah, right.
Yeah. But,
a day school, church school,
Yeah.
or something.
Yeah.
he said the children got so unruly, he just gave it up. He said he just couldn't take it anymore.
So now, way back when, like before you had your first job, you basically just, were a quote housewife. I mean, at home with the kids and obviously my mom. So we didn't have supermarket then, Did you
Well, my father-in-law was a, I don't know what to call him, but anyway. He stopped speaking to me. I was staying there while I was going over to Trent State College. And one day the subject came up about people being guilty or not guilty. And I said, well, everyone is innocent until they're proven guilty. He said, that's not so. It's the other way around. And I said, well, I'm sorry, but you've got a little mixed up. He stopped speaking to me.
Because of that?
Forever? Well, I finally caught on to the fact that he was not speaking to me. I said to my husband, I said, you tell your mother that either he starts to speak to me, answer me, or I'm going over to live at the dormitories. Now that would have caused a regular neighborhood scandal.
Right.
I knew it would. So he decided he'd speak to me. And one day we were having a family dinner, and someone passed him the peas, and he helped himself, and he held it out to the next person, and the next person didn't notice it, so he dropped it smack in the middle of the table. It was just...
That's cankerous, like that.
Mm-hmm.
But you said he was an art teacher as well, Julia?
Mm-hmm.
And
Took it over.
that business, so he did that his whole business, his whole time. Wow.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And during the war, it was very difficult to get pipe for the to drill.
And did he have to go into the service at all, or?
No,
No.
no, no.
Drafted, second in or something.
This man next door was a colonel in the Second World War, and his son has just been appointed to some kind of a very high position at West Point. Mm-hmm.
When you left the Dutch Neck Library, the big change that took place, moving the library to the municipal center, hadn't yet happened.
No,
Did you get to go for the opening of that library?
no,
No?
I wasn't in. I didn't know. No.
Oh, that stuns me.
I was flabbergasted when I got this invitation. I said, I was about to say, I said to my husband, but I didn't. I said, my goodness, I didn't think they even remembered me, let alone send me an invitation to the opening.
Well, they should have sent you an invitation to the opening of the
No,
other one.
they didn't.
I can't remember what year that, it was in the 80s when the other one opened.
Yeah, I would think that.
That was in back of the Dutch Neck, the senior center,
Right, yeah, that's.
back of the municipal building and the senior
Mhm.
center.
Right.
Now, Robert and I used to go down to their musical,
I know, that, see, I can't remember the musical, the concerts.
Sunday nights.
Yes, the concerts, they
uh-huh.
were, yeah, they were.
You asked Brent Midland what he did for me one time. I guess I better not tell you.
You did?
I guess I better not
Oh, tell us, come on, you're gonna have to tell us what. What did you do?
Well, you know, before Patricia was born,
Mhm.
my husband had a motorcycle. And I scandalized my mother-in-law. I used to just put a pair of Robert's trousers on and hop on the back. And we'd go, on hot nights, we'd go riding around the back roads. Cool off. So they had a program down there at West Windsor. They had a group of, now don't you put this,
No, this isn't going, no, don't worry.
this isn't for public.
No, we wouldn't.
They had a group of motorcyclists for amusement. And Robert and I were there, and I said to Brent Midland, I said, gee, I said, you know, I used to ride on Christmas motorcycle. What they did was they passed out tickets, which would entitle one to have a ride, but they had sidecars.
Sure,
Yeah. On the motorcycle. Well, I was very disappointed. I didn't get a ticket.
Oh.
But somehow or other, Brent Midland found a ticket, had a ticket, and came over and handed me the ticket, and then in a few minutes the number was called. So I got to ride in the motorcycle.
Oh,
Mhm.
that's cute. Now we're,
Don't you tell him I told you.
oh.
That's been so many years ago.
Oh, he's sweet. Well, you know, he's quite ill now. Did you know that?
He is?
Yeah.
Oh.
He has,
What's the matter?
he has cancer, and he's
Oh,
probably,
no.
if you wanted to give him a call, he's having very heavy chemotherapy. And he's actually in another week, he and Annalise are going to see his son in Germany, which is an indication that probably it's not
I
that
think
good.
it's the last.
Yeah, it's spread. So he's,
Yeah.
but he's still, I mean, burnt to the end. I mean, he's running around with his press releases. He's, you know, he's still got that energy. But, you know, if you wanted to give him a call or what have you, I would suggest.
Will he be
you know,
there
you
Sunday or Saturday?
Yeah, I think this weekend. I think they're going shortly after like Monday or Tuesday. I think over to
Do you think he'll be at the opening of the library?
He actually, okay, you might, right, because if they haven't gone, he'll be there. He will be there, that's
But
right.
they may have gone. Let me see if I have his.
Because I'm not sure.
I have his number at home, unfortunately, I don't have it with me. 799.
Right, I think it's that. But actually, wait and see. Because
Yeah, Brett Midland, I've got it.
Okay.
799-1642.
16, okay, that's it, 17.
Yeah.
No, but he's, he had, I think he had one type of cancer, then it spread. And then, because he's been battling it for several years.
Why is it all the good people get something like that?
Well, I have a theory. I have a friend who's Mormon, and she says, God takes the good people and leaves the rest of us here.
My sister, my daughter-in-law's brother is married to a Mormon.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they live out in California, and they had, how many children are there in a ball team? 9?
Yeah, right.
They had 9 children.
Yeah, they have a lot.
Yeah. And the priest told Mary Lou's Catholic, and in fact, my son turned Catholic here just not too long ago. He came one Sunday, one night. Robert was still alive, and he said, Mom and Dad, I have something to tell you. And I said, oh my Lord, what have you done now? And he said, well, I haven't done anything bad. But he said, I decided that I'd join the church with Mary Lou. And I said, that's fine. It's your life. You have a right to do what you please with it. And her mother had died, and her father had died, and her children were married. She was left alone. So I thought it was a good idea. It didn't upset me in the least. But that isn't what I started to tell you. I started to tell you something else. I don't know what it was now. Well, that's all right. Probably wasn't important.
Your mind is still quicker than mine, because I'm forgetting things already, and I figure if I'm forgetting now, by the time I'm 84, I'll never remember anything.
Yeah, well.
But this is great. No, this is really nice. But I know, can I take one little picture of you now, just in case? I know you're, no. So pretty. I mean,
If it turns out all right,
yeah.
fine.
Oh, don't worry. I wouldn't print.
If it doesn't turn out, just